According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker. How can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said
I named one today.
I said we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do.
Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? And if you wanted to see it, would they show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI, and that's presuming there's a CIA case file, and I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Massie's blunt line of questioning: do you have powerful people? Have you seen a CIA file on Epstein? Have you opened investigations into victims named? This forces a simple public demand. Tell us what you know and tell victims the truth, because the answers matter as much as the anger.
So I've got 4 documents I'd like to introduce into the record. The first one is Jeffrey Epstein's 6th story played out for years in plain sight. And Acosta is quoted in here saying, "I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone." The second document is entitled, "What Epstein's Bodyguard Warned About His CIA Connections." The third document is from Fox Digital. It's titled, "Epstein's Private Calendar Reveals Planned Meetings with Obama Admin Official CIA Chief." And the last document is Wall Street Journal article that highlights Ehud Barak's 36 meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. He was the former Prime Minister of Israel and head of military intelligence for Israel. It may have held that title when he met Epstein, and then, yes.
Without objection, the gentleman will hold for a second. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one UC request. This is Judge Engelmeyer's decision from August in U.S. versus Epstein, stating the government's 100,000 pages of Epstein files dwarfs the 70-odd pages of Epstein grand jury materials.
Without objection, the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007 and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to the Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to the Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to. Victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information. And we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of 2 different United States attorney's offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in live time.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said all
I named one
information-
today.
I said we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
Okay, I got to move on here. Were you present when the AG had the White House event when she released the binders to the social media influencers?
I was, yes.
So if you're willing to meet with social media influencers who stood to benefit from the sensational and sad stories of these victims, will you meet with the victims as well?
The FBI will meet with anyone who has new information.
Will you personally meet with them?
The FBI and the professionals who are handling the cases will.
Were you instructed that it was important to release the documents to the Oversight Committee on the day of my introduction of the discharge petition to release these files?
I don't know what day that was, so no.
Well, they were released that day, and there were victims' names who weren't redacted because they were in such a rush, and the victims are not happy about that. Have you investigated any of the CIA connections? Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? And if you wanted to see it, would they show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI, and that's presuming there's a CIA case file, and I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Would you be willing to look at the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein?
If there is such a file, and if it has not already been turned over to the FBI will look at any new investigative leads.
Have you made any progress on the pipe bomb investigation January 6th? And have you made any progress on the motive of the Las Vegas shooter?
As to the first, it's an ongoing investigation, and we have made progress. As to the second, sir, I'll have to get back to you.
All right, thank you. I yield back.
What unfolded in that exchange between Rep. Thomas Massie and FBI Director Kash Patel was more than a cagey Capitol Hill sparring match. It was a snapshot of a larger tension, the public's hunger for answers about Jeffrey Epstein, and the legal, ethical, and institutional limits that shape what investigators can and should release. Start with the legal bookkeeping. Judges have repeatedly pushed back on wholesale public unsealing of grand jury material. A recent ruling refused to unseal those transcripts and explicitly said the grand jury snippets are tiny compared with the massive investigative record the Justice Department holds. The court noted that the department already possesses roughly 100,000 pages of Epstein-related material versus only a few dozen pages of grand jury content. That helps explain why courts and prosecutors are insisting on caution before tossing sensitive material into the public square. That brings us to what Director Patel said. He told senators the FBI has asked agents to review the full Epstein files and to surface any credible leads. And he flatly stated there is no credible information that Epstein trafficked underage girls to other powerful people. That's a big, consequential claim. And it's exactly the kind of claim that should be measurable and testable by oversight, because victims and reporters insist the underlying documents tell a different story. The back and forth in the hearing shows why. Agencies can legitimately be constrained by sealed grand jury rules, ongoing prosecution concerns, and the need to avoid re-traumatizing victims. But those constraints also make government appear opaque when the public expects full transparency. Now let's be precise about the 302s and the claim that names exist. FD 302s are the FBI's written summaries of witness interviews. They're not evidence in themselves, but they can contain allegations and leads. Victims and some reporting contend that those interview summaries and other investigative documents reference high-profile people. Unsealed civil and court records over recent years have included dozens of names that prompted regulatory scrutiny and reporting. Some figures tied to Epstein's orbit, bankers, business people, even royalty, have faced scrutiny in media and regulatory proceedings. That doesn't mean every name equals criminal guilt. It does mean there are real leads and reputational consequences that deserve methodical oversight rather than instant dismissal or political chest thumping. Massie's CIA question, "Have you seen a CIA file on Epstein?" taps into a different but equally combustible stream of public suspicion. Over the years, people inside and outside government have floated that Epstein had intelligence ties. Former officials have said they were warned to leave it alone. At the same time, journalists and experts who've examined seized materials say there's no smoking gun evidence in the public record that Epstein was a spy for U.S. or foreign agencies. In short, plausible theories exist, but there's no definitive publicly available proof that Epstein was an intelligence asset, and smart oversight has to separate rumor from verifiable fact. That means demanding access to any interagency material that legitimately bears on investigations, and doing so through legal channels, not conspiracy forums. So what does responsible oversight look like right now? If you care about victims and the rule of law, you should want three things at once: accountability, care for survivors, and procedures that don't destroy the chance of future prosecutions or poison the privacy of victims. Concretely, Congress should compel the production of non-grand jury investigative files to a bipartisan, independent review team, a special master or special counsel, with the power to redact victim identities and to recommend prosecutorial steps. Courts can then evaluate narrowly targeted unsealing requests rather than a headline-driven dump. That approach protects due process and victims, while making sure agencies can't hide behind secrecy as a shield for political favoritism. Citizens should also demand two practical reforms: fund independent victim advocate units within oversight processes so survivors have real representation when materials are reviewed, and require timelines and public accounting from DOJ and the FBI about what leads were opened, what was closed, and why, with appropriate protections for ongoing investigations. Transparency without care is cruelty. Secrecy without accountability is malpractice. Finally, hold people to a simple test. Are you seeking truth to fix the system or seeking headlines to score political points? The American people and the victims deserve investigations that are sober, methodical, and survivor-centered. If your lawmaker says they want everything released, ask whether they support independent review and redaction protections for victims. If your lawmaker defends secrecy, ask for specifics. What legal basis are they relying on? And will they support a special master to balance victims' privacy and the public interest? If you want to act, do three things today. Call or email your member of Congress and demand a bipartisan independent review of the non-grand jury Epstein investigative files with strong victim protections. Support survivor advocacy groups that are pressing for careful disclosure and services for victims. And back legislation that forces DOJ to produce a public accounting on a secure, redacted basis of the scope of investigative leads and decisions made in the Epstein probes. That's how oversight becomes justice instead of theater. This hearing was loud and messy, but it clarified the choice. We can chase sensationalism, or we can build an accountable process that protects victims, preserves prosecutions, and finally gives the public the clear, documented answers it's owed. Demand the latter.